Welcome to the Gracewriters Podcast, Christian writers changing popular culture. Hit subscribe on your favourite podcast player so you never miss an episode. And find show notes, useful links and a full transcript at gracewriters.com. Today on the podcast, mother of 5 involved in women's student care and counselling ministries, author of multiple books and podcaster Kelly Needham. I'm Belinda Pollard. I'm an author, editor and book coach with a theology degree and 20 years in the publishing industry. I blog for writers at smallbluedog.com, and you can find links to all my books, blogs and online courses at belindapollard.com.
Hi, I'm Alison Young. I'm a former early childhood educator with 4 adult children. Aside from writing, my other passion is photography, and as part of the media team at my local church, it's a privilege to be able to capture God moments, both big and small. I write contemporary romance under the pen name Alison Joy, and you can find out more about my books at alisonjoywriter.com.
Hi, I'm Donita Bundy. For the past 20 years, I've been using my theology degree to underpin my preaching and more recently to inspire my urban fantasy series, Armour of Light. You can find out more about me and my books and my other endeavours like book cover design and my blog at donitabundy.com, DONITABUNDY. Kelly Needham is the author of 2 books, PURPOSEFOOLED and FRIEND-ISH. She's also been a contributing author to many other books, including Faithful and Beautifully Distinct. She served on staff at multiple churches, serving in youth, college, and women's ministry. Kelly currently co-leads a women's teaching program and co-hosts a podcast, Clearly, with Jimmy and Kelly Needham. Welcome to the podcast, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great that you could join us. So, Kelly, just to help our audience get to know you a bit better, we'd like you to answer the rapid fire 5 questions. Are you up for that?
Yes, bring it on. Let's do it.
Okay. Who is your target audience?
I would say Christian on audience mainly, and adults usually. So
That's great. What is your main genre?
Mostly right now, nonfiction. Writing a lot of that, although I've dabbled a little bit in this last book in fiction, just a tad.
When is your optimum time for writing?
For me, that would have to be midday, the most inconvenient time as a parent, but absolutely. If I can hit 10 a.m. to like 2 p.m., get writing in there, that's ideal.
Yeah. So where is your favorite place to write?
My favorite place to write is actually in a crowded coffee shop with headphones blaring instrumental music loudly to tune everybody out. But if I can find a window seat in a busy coffee shop with people moving all around me, I actually love writing there.
Briefly, can you tell us how you got into writing?
I got into writing accidentally, actually. I have a degree in finance, so I love math. So writing was not on the agenda, but I started blogging alongside my husband's ministry when we were first married, and that's kind of how I came into writing.
So how did your first book come about?
Oh man, again, accidentally. I did not actually set out to write a book, but I had some interest in writing about friendship because I had looked for a resource on friendship and couldn't find one that met the needs I was looking for. And so I began doing the research myself and interviewing people, and I just started blogging about that. So I wrote a series of blogs on friendship, and it was actually people reading those blogs, resonating with them, and then asking me, can you make this into something printed, something that I could print and make notes on and pass out to people? And so I started looking into the idea of doing something bigger, publishing something, maybe self-publishing. But it was a probably 10-year journey from those initial research and writing to published book.
That's interesting because some people actually choose to blog a book, they actually make a plan. I'm going to write my book as a series of blog posts over this period of time, but you kind of did it the other way. Did you find there were, did it introduce complications that you were using blog material to create your book, or how did you actually take the raw material of the blogs and convert that into a cohesive book?
Yeah. It was actually a difficult process. It was a very difficult book to write because the topic of friendship and the way I was writing about it was already nuanced in some ways that were difficult anyway, because I was talking about the idolatry of friendship, but we need friendship. And so as it began to expand into a bigger thing, I actually didn't use quite as much of those initial blogs as I had thought, because now that I had more words, I realized that was actually an asset to deal with something, so sensitive and nuanced. And so I actually rewrote a lot of that content. I used the blogs, if anything, became like an outline in some ways that I referenced a lot, but I really didn't keep a ton of it in the final printed format.
It's interesting. I actually wrote a book a few years ago that was based on a bunch of blog posts, and I found that the blog material was enslaving me in a way.
Yes.
And I felt that it didn't have the clarity and the flow that it needed. So I actually ended up later on coming back at it again and almost starting from a blank page with just the same ideas. Did you move to a blank page, or did you still keep the blog materials in the document you were writing?
No, I actually ended up, referencing them for my own research, but I just kind of got rid of it because of the same reason. I started with my printed blogs and then thought, I moved them into a Word document. Okay, well, I'll write from here. And it did feel really enslaving, and it felt like it hindered me. And if anything, it felt like this is time to write something fresh and new. The content's the same, the truth in it is the same, but I felt like I needed to come at it from different angles and address things a little bit differently. And so when I kind of moved away from those blog posts is actually when I was able to do a lot better writing. But that took some time because, you feel like I did all this work already. I wrote all these blogs already. I don't want to waste them. And so you feel a little bit tied to them. And why write something new? I already gave my best effort back then, but getting rid of them actually freed me up to do a better job.
Yeah. And what was the path from there to publication?
Well, I started on the journey to really just self-publish. I didn't have a lot of connections with publishers, and I didn't really know how to get them. I had some people who had coached me, who had published books themselves and said, hey, I can maybe make a connection for you. But I had that, I think it's Tozer. Is it Tozer? There's a writer who said, sometimes you have a book burning in your bones that you're like, I have to get this out of me just so that I will be relieved. That's how I felt about that book. I was like, I don't care if it's self-published or published by somebody. I just need to get done with it. So I'd actually been intending to self-publish, and it was in the process of writing the book, kind of outlining it, that I had a connection happen that was unanticipated with with a literary agent. And again, there was a testing, right? These are all really interesting partnerships we make, especially with our own work. And so when I had a conversation I actually talked to 2 different agents now that I'm remembering it. And one of them, I really didn't resonate with him. And when I shared the material of the book, he clearly didn't get it. And I was like, I'd rather just self-publish the book than try and fight for a publishing deal. That wasn't as important to me. But then the second agent I talked to, I really connected with and felt like they understood and really saw a need for the book like I did. And they were willing to work with me, and I was willing to do that with them. And it was through that partnership that some opportunities opened for a few publishing houses here in the States. But even then it was like, this is my book, baby. Again, I'd rather self-publish unless I'm partnered with somebody who really understands this content and believes in it with me. But I did find a publisher who understood the material and actually was interested in it for personal reasons. Their editor was in particular. And it was that conversation that made me realize, okay, I think I could actually partner with this editor and with this publisher for this content. And so that whole process was probably 1.5 years.
You made it a team sport. But would you, with your blog, did you already have quite an audience so that you would have had that readership already there to give to a publisher?
I had a decent audience, but again, who are you comparing to? It's like there's so many different ways to think about that. But I probably at the time had, how many people are on my email subscription list? It was probably over 1,000. So I would say a decent audience, but not like what some other people stateside were pulling. Even my social media, you know, when you make a proposal for a publisher, they want to know all those numbers, how many people follow you. And honestly, it was more than total obscurity. You know, I had more than like 80 people following, but it wasn't anything to write home about. And so I think it really was that this editor at this publisher believed in the content, and there really wasn't anything else out there at the time addressing the topic in the way that I was. And so I think it was those two combination of things that she really fought for the book with the team at the rest of the publishing house that was maybe kind of on the fence. So that connection of her really believing in the content, I think, is what made it possible. So I had a little bit of an audience, but it wasn't at that point anything huge.
Kelly, as writers, we may say it's all about impact, that true success is depth of effect, not numbers of sales. But in truth, we all want to sell books and have an impact. How can we tackle feelings of failure when we don't see the results?
Mm-hmm. That is the tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's not wrong to want to sell books. And I think how a book sells, or how many people read a blog and share it, is telling us something about how content is resonating with people. So it is information that I think is helpful. So I pay attention to it a little bit, and I want to know that what I'm writing is connecting with people who read it. And if it's not, I would like to know what's not resonating so that I can shift gears or see what I can't see my blind spots. But at the same time, I would say this is something I tell myself. There are books out there that sell like crazy, and I read some of them, and I think to myself, I could write that. There are books that are easy to write that aren't saying much, but sell well for one reason or another. Or maybe it's just the person with the right connections or personality or all those things. And people will read it and put it down and move on. I would rather my book succeed in this way, that every person who does pick it up, that my writing creates a fork in the road for them, that there is a choice they have to make after encountering what I'm writing about, either to stay the same, but like they have to do that intentionally, or to go a different direction because of what has been shared. And if less people read the book, but more of those readers have an encounter like that is shifting for them, it is changing the trajectory of their life, even just a little bit, that actually I think has a longer impact. It might be less in number, but I think over time, the impact and the success of it, I would say, is actually greater than like a flash in the pan of like, whoa, sold a lot of books, but we all moved on from it and went to the next one. It's like, well, that is a type of success maybe, and you could go after that, but I'd rather go after the intentional impact of individual readers. So I do think numbers and sales matter a little bit, but that's at least what I'm fighting for. And sometimes I'll ask the Lord for, God, would you help me? Just how many people write to their authors? They read their books. I don't do that very often. I don't read a book very often and then find out how to contact the author and write them. But I will ask God, will you just help me hear stories, just a few, of how this book is resonating with people? And that enough is helpful to me to know, okay, it's doing what I had hoped it was doing. And I can rest easy knowing I don't know half the stories. I've just got to, in faith, put it out there and trust God's going to put it in the hands that need it.
That's the encouragement, isn't it? Like, we cannot see the impact that our work will have on others, and we will never know to the full extent. But perhaps that's the encouragement for all of us to reach out to the author of books that we've read and had an impact. Because, like, I have to admit, I received something recently that was similar to that, and it just was mind-blowing. And I thought, yes, so perhaps that we could all do that in reverse and actually connect with that. Thanks for that, Kelly.
Kelly, the subtitle of Purposeful says, chasing your dreams, finding your calling, and reaching for greatness will never be enough. Is it wrong to chase our dreams, to strive for greatness in our writing? And how do we know when we've found it?
Yeah, my subtitle's a little punchy there, isn't it? That was intentional to get people intrigued in it. But I I do believe what it says. But I don't think it's wrong to chase dreams. I just don't think it will satisfy us in the way that sometimes we think it will. And that's really what the theme of that book is, that I do think we're made for transcendent meaning and purpose. And I think every heart hungers for that, but I don't think any amount of achievement can accomplish it. That's what I think the book of Ecclesiastes is about in the Bible. You have a man who accomplished everything, did it all. He climbed the mountain we're all trying to climb and did everything better than us, and says, essentially, there's nothing here, nothing more than what was at the bottom of the mountain as well. Meaning is really found in a person. Meaning is found in the person of God. And so when it comes to like writing, it's like, if I could write on a piece of paper my wildest dreams for writing, the books I would want to write, the time I want to write them, the success I would want them to have, whether that's impact or numbers or both, all of those things, the right team of people around me. If I got it all, it still wouldn't be enough. And so I don't think it's wrong to chase it, but it just, why am I going after it? And is it something I'm holding with closed hands? I have to have this to be okay. If I do, like that's a lose-lose battle. You get it, it's not gonna be enough, and you're gonna be, it's what every person who has immense amounts of fame, we're seeing them deal with. They got everything they wanted, they're not okay. Or then if I don't get it, it's like, that's okay. I'm free to fail and I'm free to chase things. So I don't think it's wrong to chase those things, but it really isn't going to satisfy the deepest needs in me, which I think actually makes us better writers, because we're not so attached to, I have to succeed to be okay. It's like, I'm okay before I did anything. So now I'm free to give my best at this. And even if that means taking a risk and I fall on my face, it's okay. I can pick up and start again.
You feel like this will be the thing. And then when you get to that thing, it crumbles and you're trying to move on to the next thing and the next thing. And I know so many, working with authors, I know so many who are just so starry-eyed. It's going to be so exciting when my first book is published. And then they're like, was it meant to feel like this? Because it doesn't feel like I thought it would feel. How do you think we've picked up these false narratives about what writing will be like? And how do you think we can deal with those in particular?
Well, I think that comes from what we're seeing culturally, what we see celebrated culturally. I mean, what we celebrate is what we think will satisfy generally. It's true for my kids too. What I make much of and celebrate, they tend to gravitate toward. So when we look at the culture around us, which is not, by and large, are not Christian people, and many of them don't have a sense of a meaning coming from a higher power, right? You have a world driven by humans and human accomplishment being kind of the end all be all of what this world has to offer. If there's no life beyond this, or there's no greater being beyond us, then all we have is us. And we are left to be the protagonist and the hero on a mission to accomplish something. And so human achievement and accomplishment becomes kind of the end all be all of life. And why people are famous. People are famous because they've accomplished something, generally, most of the time, whether it's in music or acting or writing. And we're seeing it put before us all the time. And so I think that's just teaching us as we watch it happen. Oh, okay, that's where meaning is found. I need to achieve something. Even if it can't be on that level, I'm going to do this. So I think that's why that's happening. I think we have to, for me personally, I have to really steward my mind and my imagination kind of on a daily basis as I'm seeing things. Sometimes when I'm on the internet, on my phone, social media, whatever, and I'm seeing kind of the cool things that the algorithm puts in front of me of people doing awesome stuff. And I will tell myself, Jesus, you said, apart from you, we can do nothing. And many of these people, I'm seeing their great achievements and they don't trust you. That means that in the final analysis, these great human achievements are really a type of nothing. And it looks really fancy, but it's still empty. So would you help me have eyes to see what is something and what you value? And I'll just daydream sometimes and think about that. Like if God were peering over and looking at, all the people on the earth, what would he be impressed with? What would he look at and go, I love that. I I see that. That is impressive to me. And even just doing that exercise regularly helps me to go, okay, I want to be in that bucket of impressive, not the worldly bucket of impressive, but it just takes a type of intentionality and effort to move myself from one to the other, because every day it's screaming at me. This is where meaning is found. Chase achievement, in your own way.
So, Kelly, what advice would you give someone whose achievements have not matched up with the goals that they set?
I would say, one, welcome to the club, maybe. I don't know many people that disparity is not there. There are very few people. And also, two, if you did achieve everything you had ever set out to do, you would probably feel pretty discouraged because on the other side of it, you realize, oh, I still left wanting. I think about what you said, Belinda, earlier, like people think they're going to publish their first book and be like, it's amazing. If anything, I think there's a type of postpartum depression, post-book depression that happens. You release your book into the world and there's all this energy. And then I just will never forget after my first book feeling that way, just discouraged and why do I feel sad and despondent? It's because I put all this work into this thing and it did turn out how I wanted. And man, if all my hope was in that achievement, then that's really just disappointing. And so if your achievements haven't met the goals you set, one, I think that's is normal. And two, what if there are even bigger goals you didn't set for yourself that you'd met? I mean, I think even just to keep writing despite perceived failure, whatever that is, I'm not even saying it is failure, just perceived failure, is quite a feat in and of itself that I think is impressive. And is something not everybody does. There are many people who try to pick up their pen, so to speak, their keyboard, and start doing it. And at the first sign of failure, they quit. And so to even just continue doing something you feel called to do when it seems to not be panning out the way you want is actually quite a great achievement. So even though your achievements might not have met the goals you set, you might have achieved plenty of other unbelievable things that are impressive in their own right if you just had eyes to see it.
Yeah, maybe it's about a change or a shift in perspective and maybe a resetting of goals.
And maybe things that we won't know until heaven.
Yeah, I think so. I think there are so many things in the new heavens and new earth that we are going to God says the things whispered in secret are going to be shouted from rooftops, which is very terrifying in one moment, but also really encouraging in the other. I mean, there are so many days that we're talking to writers right now. I mean, who doesn't resonate with this? There's so many days where you're like, I can't do this. My first book, my whole journal in that season is filled with page after page of, I can't write this book. I can't write this book. It's not going to come together. This is an impossible task. And I'm spending hours just typing a little bit. And then I'm on my knees like, God, I don't know what to do next. I'm scared, I'm nervous, and just all those moments of trying to trust him. What an encouragement that those moments will be rewarded. They will be seen later. And maybe what I think are my greatest achievements in this life, maybe are, books I've written or things like that, that God will instead pull back the curtain and go, you thought it was that. It was actually, this was more impressive. And that we'll get to see that about other lives. People who just have accomplished great feats of achievement of faith in other ways that no one saw because it was done in secret, that it will be made public and put on display, and they will be entrusted with things because of that. I mean, it's so fun to think about that. That perspective shift has really helped empower me to continue doing the work of writing, which is a very hidden work by and large.
Beautiful thoughts.
So the Gracewriters slogan is Christian writers changing popular culture. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I want to kind of be part of the team, like just talking to you guys. And as I was even perusing some other episodes that you've done, I think what a great thing for Christians to do, to get into the arts and not necessarily to write Christian books, but to, as Christians, do their craft with excellence. And some of the things I've heard you guys say, to even write characters into your books that aren't just portraying people of faith as just terrible human beings, which is by and large what exists out there. But even that is I think a great way to help shape people's imaginations and thoughts about things. And I think the effort of Christians in the arts is really important and needed, and has not always been something people have seen as important. If it doesn't have a very front-facing Jesus banner on it, sometimes we tend to dismiss it. But I actually think it's really important that Christians make excellent art that actually is above and beyond what the culture is writing, because we serve the all creative God. So our art should be even more excellent. And the world should look around and go, if you want a great book, go read a Christian author. Not necessarily because it's a Christian book. Or if you want to watch a great movie, go find a person who produced it or directed it that's a Christian. They make the best art, even if I don't agree with their ideology. Now, that's obviously not how people think, but I think they should. And I think that is an important effort to make. And I think that takes more than just one or two people to do it. So I love y'all's slogan. And I think it's really important to encourage people to step up to the plate in that way.
Thank you. Love that. Love those insights. Wow. Kelly, where can people find you online?
The easiest place would be to go to the website, actually share with my husband, jimmyandkelly.com, Kelly. And there you can find an assortment of things that we do individually and together, and find places to follow us online, on social media. We're both on Instagram and Facebook. But if you go to jimmyandkelly.com, you'll be able to find all sorts of places there to kind of see what all we're doing.
Sounds great. How about I pray for you before we finish up?
That would be delightful. Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for Kelly. We thank you for all of the ideas and insights that she's brought into this episode today, and all the encouragement for so many grace writers out there who are wrestling with similar issues, practical issues, issues of mindset and purpose and goals. And we pray that you will continue to bless her abundantly with her family, with her writing, with her podcasting, and that you will also encourage all the other grace writers out there who are trying to figure out what their purpose is and how to be content with what you are calling them to do as writers. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Kelly Needham, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Donita Bundy and Alison Joy. I'm Belinda Pollard, and we'll see you next time on the Gracewriters Podcast. Gracewriters is run by volunteers, and we're incredibly grateful to those who have contributed financially to help keep this ministry running. Thank you so very much. If you have enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to help, please go to gracewriters.com and look for Donate in the menu. Continue today's conversation in our free online forum and find useful articles, links and resources at gracewriters.com.